My story starts many years ago in Israel. I am from Israel. I'm very proud of it, and I grew up in a kibbutz. How many of you know what a kibbutz is? Yeah. So it's a social community. My kibbutz, about 500 people. It's still, my parents still live there. Very agricultural-like. In fact, it looks kind of similar to here. The vegetation, the sun. And I grew up walking barefoot outside, and luckily at age 10, fourth grade, we all had to pick an instrument. And I picked up the cello because of a girl who played cello, and she was 14. And I just didn't dare talking to her. So I figured out that if I will play whatever she played, I didn't know what it is, I just saw it, she will marry me. That was my plan at age 10. And of course she didn't, but I fell in love with the cello right away. And it became my companion for life. And the first piece I played, which back then was really a horrible experience, was the prelude of the first suite by Bach. And that prelude, you must know it. That prelude was the first piece that any composer of significance thought should present the cello as a solo instrument, and thus really changed the course of the cello in history. And that was Johann Sebastian Bach. Around 1720, he wrote the 6 cello suites for cello solo. And the first suite starts with a prelude, which I'm going to play for you now. And that was the first piece that my teacher at age 10 put on my music stand. I couldn't read music even, and said, "Play." Closer, guys. You don't have to be so far.
We have the seats here.
Okay,
Leslie.
that's okay. So, going back to those lessons, I was shocked. I wished I would have an iPhone to take a video of how shocking it was for me to hear, okay, play this. But every lesson he would teach me a little bit more, how to hold the bow, how to hug the cello, and so on, and how to read notes. I just saw a lot of black dots in the beginning. And after 4 years of studying with this teacher, I moved to another teacher in the big city, in Tel Aviv, and I used to take 3 buses once a week with one of my parents. It would take 3 hours. And I asked him, why did you start with this difficult piece? And he told me, Amit, you'll see that this prelude, which you just heard, will stay with you all your life. And you will always visit it from different angles of your life. As a child, now as a teenager, when I was 14, then as an adult, as a father, one day as a grandfather, I'm not there yet, and maybe one day just before you leave this world. You will always look at this story from a different angle. And he referred to this Bach suite as the story in the Old Testament of the creation of the world. And he said, you know the story about Adam and Eve. And when you learn it as a child, it's a very simple story. A man, a woman, the snake, don't eat the apple. You eat the apple, you get punished. But as you grow, you hear the same story, and there's so many more meanings to it. And he said, this will be your Adam and Eve story, this prelude, and you'll see how it will mean so much to you in different ways, and it does so in many ways. So I wanted to share it. But as I was developing as a cellist in Israel, I was also a basketball player. I was not that tall, so I thought I would go into basketball and not cello. But at age 18, like any Israeli, I had to go to the army. And I served in the Israeli army in a very secretive unit called the Army String Quartet. And I have to say that regardless of the fact, of course, we didn't fight, but we performed every single day for soldiers, for politicians, for ceremonies, for memorials. And I have to say now, looking back, that I'm so thankful that I had to stop my life for 3 years and give something to my country. I have 3 kids now. We are very proud, also Americans, and they're now the age of college. And I actually convinced them, I'm very proud of it, to take a gap year and not to go straight to college. But I wish it would be mandatory to do something. You don't have to fight, but something for your country. And I feel really privileged that I had to play in a string quartet and see and share music with people in places that I would never, ever think possible. But during those formative years, I also realized that for me, music, like for other people, maybe for actors, plays, for me, music was a way to deliver a story. And I remember from very early age, the first piece that I played that was kind of related to Judaism was a Jewish prayer by Bloch. And not only that I saw the reaction by the people, but it was very clear to me to see a movie in front of me when I play music, which is always the case, even when I play Bach. And I want to share with you now the Jewish prayer by Bloch. Well, let's see what story you think it is about. So, hold your thoughts and feelings with it. This is a Jewish prayer by Bloch. Yes.
It's for Jewish people to keep on keeping on through all the horrible things, through just the journeys of life. Just keep on keeping on. The low places, keep climbing, keep going. That's what I got out of it.
Anybody else?
I saw ballet dancers.
Yes.
I just heard nature crying out for peace and healing. I heard boulders and waterfalls and other things crying out.
Beautiful. Yes.
It just seemed to me that it was a request to God, a plea to God.
Plea to God, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, the beauty about the language of music, and music is a language. I always say when people ask me how many languages you speak, I say Hebrew, English, some German because of my German wife, and music. It's a language. The good thing about this language that people can understand it differently. You must listen when you hear this language, otherwise it doesn't work, but you can interpret it differently. However, from our point of view, the performers, what I told you before, that I realized the power of sharing a story from early on is not just that your imagination comes to mind and, okay, you see nature, or you see God, or you have to be Jewish, or it's about Judaism. We are actors. And as actors, we have to investigate the script. So we can, even if we're not Jewish, we can play the part. It might be harder for this piece if you're not Jewish, or for the Elgar Concerto, which I'm going to talk about after, which is a piece we're playing this weekend. Can I play it if I'm not British? Could I? I mean, I have to be a really good actor and have an English accent. That's not easy for an Israeli. But if you're a really great actor, Tom Hanks can do many things. So what do you need to know when you play a Jewish prayer by Bloch? I call it with my students. I tell them, you need to give me 10 points about this piece. I don't care what. When did he leave? The time of this piece written? What did he see outside the window when he wrote it? And so on. But in this case also, what is a Jewish prayer? Have you ever been in an old traditional synagogue? So when I play this piece, being Jewish or not, maybe for me it's natural, but this is a Jewish prayer. How is a prayer in a synagogue different than in church? Well, the first thing you need to know as an actor is that when you're a cantor, you're not facing you guys. If I'm the cantor praying, I'm facing the Torah, the Bible. Not only that, you can't even see my back because I'm covered with what we call talit, this big piece of cloth. So the beginning of this piece, if you know what a Jewish prayer means, starts very intimate, and it's the cantor talking to God, to the Bible. And you, the congregation, is just reacting. And the reaction is the piano part, which is not here. It's just a hum. But the beginning should not be, I am so great. Yeah, it's a cantor, not even singing, speaking. So if you can imagine the big piece of cloth covering you, you have to see that in front of you. Now, in a synagogue, an old tradition synagogue, it's kind of chauvinistic. Women and men are separated. So I never talked to Bloch, but I look for that in the music. The first time I hear this, what do you think it is? It's from upstairs, the women. They are reclined to the cantor. The cantor just finished. Now the women. So we can argue how a feminine voice should sound. These days you can't even say that. You know, you cannot. But I'm the performer, I'm the actor. So for me it could be, feminine could mean many things. But whatever that means, it needs to be identified by me as an actor. The middle part, what do you think is the character? In the middle of a prayer, what is Jewish people known for? I mean, suffering, crying, intelligent, but also what else? humor. Think of Jerry Seinfeld. Think of all the greatest comedians. No matter how much death we've had in our history, we make fun of it. I mean, we even make fun of the Holocaust. There are great jokes about the Holocaust. It's terrible, but in any Jewish music, if you look for it, you'll find a very cynical, grotesque, humoristic part. So in every good Jewish piece, you will look for it, and as an actor, you will make it alive. So this part indicates to be a little faster, but that's it. But if you really feel that you cried, intimate, then the women replied, but then you come in and you just make a joke of it. Who is this? Of pleading. You ask God for forgiveness. In fact, we have a whole holiday just for that, Yom Kippur. The holiday that is devoted to recognizing that we make mistakes and asking for forgiveness. Asking for forgiveness from God is always there, and it's usually after the happy part. So this climax. It's like the sermon where the rabbi would actually, so if you know how the service goes, it will help you. If it's in your blood system, it will be easier. But if you're not Jewish, not from Israel, and you play Jewish music, you can get closer to it. Same as I would do if I have to play Elgar, like tomorrow. So that leads me to, so I felt that kind of power of music really from day one playing the cello. I really felt that I'm speaking with it, and I always see a movie in front of me, always. Now you might not agree with the movie, but as one of my great mentors used to tell me, the old lady in the corner in the concert that is maybe even falling asleep, she might not know the story, but she would feel that you have a story. And that's the good thing. If I can awake a story in your soul, I've done my job. So that's for Jewish music, but I want to talk a little bit about tomorrow and about the piece that I'm playing, because the Elgar cello concerto, how many are coming to the concert? All of you, yeah? You have to raise your hand up. Yes, you are coming, you are coming. After you hear this presentation, you're coming. Yeah, they're coming, yes. Good, doing your job. So, Elgar Concerto is really one of the biggest cello concertos that were written for cello. Of course, we have, if you know cello repertoire, we have Dvořák. The most heroic of all cello concertos, maybe of all concertos. Dvořák wrote it when he was in New York, at the end of the 19th century. It's bombastic, it's Hollywood-like. There's a love story in it for his sister-in-law who he was in love with. But Elgar Cello Concerto was written in 1919. And there are many sad parts about this piece, but one sad part as a teacher is that sometimes students play this piece for me, many times actually, and they're doing master degree. I teach at Peabody, which is part of Johns Hopkins. Or if I give a master class anywhere around the world, a student that's doing master, bachelor degree, even doctoral degree, and I'll ask them, always my first question, when was this piece written? They're like, I forgot to Google it. They're not curious to Google it. That's a problem. And then I tell them it was written in 1919 in England. What happened in the world just before? No idea. And they're, I have to say, some of them much smarter than I am. Some of my students doing double degree in computer science in Hopkins and cello, or mechanical engineering and cello. 1,600 SATs. Yet they're not curious enough to ask those 10 points. So this is, I'm going out of subject a little bit, but it's also about teaching. Yeah. So I found out now. I just finished my 21st year. And Hopkins. Yeah, I survived so long. But I realized after all those years, the mentorship between a mentor and a student, of course, my job is to teach them the cello. But if I can teach them to be curious and flexible, those two, that's it. If they leave Hopkins and they're curious enough to explore, to ask questions, and they're flexible enough as musicians to always adjust to different conductors, to different orchestras, to different setup, they will be successful. But if I teach them to copy me, I failed. And teaching to copy is usually what is done in the Western world education, unfortunately. You memorize something, you get an A, you forget about it. You memorize, you get an A, you forget about it. So I'm trying to change that. But back to Elgar, 1919. Elgar is from the Victorian time. Elgar, if you look at him, if you look at on Google image, and you see Elgar's photo, Elgar has a 5-piece suit. He's an aristocrat from the Victorian time. If you watch Downton Abbey, he would be having tea, in the afternoon with the rich people. And in 1919, he's devastated and shocked because, of course, England, like many countries in the world, lost most men in the war. And there are no men left in England, so women start working in the factory. But Elgar writes this piece, and it's the end of his life. So he's looking back at the empire that was before the war. And the piece starts with a famous chords, group of chords, but it also says nobilimente, noble. So that's another question I always ask my students. What does it mean a noble Englishman in that time? Because many people, when they play, I don't know, how many of you know the Elgar cello concerto? Okay, not many, but it starts like this. Very big. Most recordings of this piece, most performances of this piece, shows the cellist being sort of a wild horse, right? If you have long hair and you do this, or big dress, it fits perfectly. So if you see cellist play it on YouTube, the biggest numbers of views, it will most likely look like this. Not noble. But Elgar asked for nobilemente. So if you look at Elgar and you know what noble posture means, and you play the same thing, and you just look noble. And of course, it starts in a completely different way. Now, if you come to the concert and you actually wait to the end of the piece, so half an hour later exactly, the same theme will come back. And guess what? That's after the empire is gone, after the devastation of the world. He doesn't write nobilemente anymore. And not only that, he adds ritenuto. Ritenuto in music meaning to slow down. So in the beginning, it's noble and there's no ritenuto, meaning you have to play it in tempo and noble. Two things that actually nobody does in the beginning. So it has to be, it's in 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4, no ritenuto. That's the end of the first statement. Now the same statement, at literally the end of the piece, has ritenuto in it, has no noble request, and he adds a chord. He does this. Same. He adds a chord. So he adds a chord to make it wilder, and he wants you to slow down. So it sounds after the whole story. did I read anything in a book about it, or did I ask Elgar? No. It's like a director in the theater trying to figure out what the text by Shakespeare means. And those, I call it a musical mystery, and we are musical detectives. And we try to figure it out. So this is a big sign for me. Now, back to the beginning of the piece. Have you heard of Pinchas Zuckerman?
Yeah.
The great violinist. So when I was 16, when I played this first time, I had the chance to play it for him in Israel. And when I got to this moment, that's the main theme of the first movement. This opportunity, and then the first question he asked me, he had a cigar actually in his mouth, but turned off. And he asked me, Amit, have you ever been in the countryside of England? No, I've never been outside of Israel back then, at age 16. So he said, after the lesson, you should go and look up how it looks like, the green, the small lanes of bicycles, not of cars, like Scotland and bicycles. And imagine that you are going on a bike and you see this beauty around you. Nice cabin, nice pub, nice flower. You see it, you acknowledge it, but you don't slow down because then you fall from the bike. So you ride really slowly, but you don't stop. And he said that, well, to have an image, but also because I was so passionate about slowing down on almost every beat, which also happens in many recordings. But I played just to show the beauty. And that bicycle story will never get out of my mind. Now, to go back to being a musical detective, when this theme boils up to maybe the most famous part of this concerto, it says on the same theme, sostenuto, to sustain. And not only that, then the brass of the orchestra, the trombones, they play. And the trombones and horns, they're very far from where I am on the stage. And it simply takes time for their chords to come closer. And I only realized that when I played it first time, that if I don't sustain there, they will never be with me. But musically, it makes sense. So again, being a musical detective, the theme in the beginning, slow. You recognize beauty, but keep going. But then the main theme comes 20 seconds later, and it's sostenuto and forte. That's basically the first movement. The second movement starts with what we call pizzicato, like a guitar. But do you recognize this theme? Do you? Yes. The beginning, it's just in pizzicato. Imagine that the beginning, instead of being a monologue or a dialogue on stage by actors, it will actually be an announcer, somebody that narrates a story. So the beginning of the story will start with somebody coming in, noble, saying, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're about to hear the story of the British Empire." And it starts, yeah? And then this is a monologue. It's one person on stage. Another one joins. The whole orchestra telling the story. The second movement, the same narrator come in, but now instead of being normal, he's asked to play it pizzicato. What do you think happens now? What is going to happen in this? So any drama, you know, even if it starts with beauty, let's say, you see this beautiful scene, and then many movies will have 20 years ago or 5 years ago, you see a sign, and then boom, it goes back. Yeah. So this goes to the jolly, happy time of England. This movement. This is a fast movement, but to get to it, the orchestra and the soloist are searching for that moment. So after the pizzicato, I'm playing as if I'm checking if I'm able to be happy, although the war just happened. So no, the narrator, you can't. I try different chord. Oh. And it goes on for a little bit, and eventually I convince the narrator or the director that I would like to remember, at least before death, I would like to remember what it used to be. So I plead and I convince the play to go back 20 years. It says 20 years ago, the orchestra plays yum chum chum chum. And so it's really happy, leggero, full of life, yeah, and it ends major and happy and beautiful. And you think, wow, that was so great. But then comes the third movement. I don't know if any of you have been in a battlefield or seen, I'm sure, movies of First World War, Second World War. When this movement starts, imagine black and white battlefield with thousands of bodies, thousands, all over, from both sides, because that's how they fought back then. Thousands of bodies, and then one soldier, and smoke going up. One soldier is standing up and looking, not knowing if he's alive or dead. So it starts, it's the most sad movement, but if you have that image, so after the 20 years back, present, and it starts. It's a sound that invites the audience, not to the audience. The movement ends, the whole orchestra with the soloist playing together. It's like your last breath. Last breath and death. And right after comes the last movement of the piece. The last movement, you remember how it ends, with the same theme, but it's to really glorify the British Empire, and from strength to length of the empire. I mean, Andrew from New Zealand, they really control the entire world, and you can refer to this story also in these days, American empire, and how it maybe falls down or not, depending on how you look at it, but how empires falling at the end, and how wars are terrible for the world. But here you have one side of this movement is the landscape, the breath of it. So. After that comes other parts of England, like the love of drinking. So this thing has an accent on a weak beat. I always try to show my students, if you have half a pint of beer, you do, hey! Hey, because they don't play the accent, they play. But he writes this accent on the second beat always. Hey! Hey! It has the elephants of India. There's a moment in the movement where the cello soloist and the entire cello section playing like March of Elephants in India. Oh! Very heavy. We go through the movement and come the end. The last page of this movement, I think, is the most beautiful page of it, because usually, like in theater, the punchline, the drama, it will be very painful, but the best moment for a great actor or actress to show their ability. The end of this story is basically Elgar looking back as an old man and realizing what humankind can do to itself. A few things that happen in that war that never happened before is the use of tanks, the use of gas, and having millions and millions of people die, which was not before the case. So it was really shocking for people from his age. And he uses the cello, I think, in the best way, the most human way. And there is a recording of Elgar himself conducting this piece from 1928. And you can see on every bar almost he writes a change of tempo. So it's very fluid. And he actually does it. So this part. Just agony. One of the most beautiful cello moments, we call it a shift, but it's actually like a singer reaching a high note. There are three of them here that are, every cellist waits for that moment. And so on, and then it goes back. Remember how it went back, the narrator, to the main theme, but pizzicato? Before the end, without the nobilemente, Elgar decides to go back to which movement, do you think? The third movement, the death. The death. And all of a sudden he writes lento, so it's a sudden twice as slow. And we go back, the narrator is preparing the stage for the end with the theme of the third movement. And it's just a whisper, extremely soft. While I'm playing this note, the orchestra is playing just very soft, the first note of the beginning, and they stay like this. That's what we call a fermata. And then it's done, and I come in with anger and wildness. The same beginning. And leads to the end of the piece. So that goes in my mind when I play it, if you wanted to know. Now, do you have some questions you want to ask? Yes?
The cello that you're playing is really old. Is that the 1695?
No.
Which one?
Well, so I've gone through many cellos in my life. One of them was Pablo Casal's cello. But until this instrument, all the cellos I played were loaned to me by foundations because it's impossible for musicians to buy those instruments. But this cello is a Carl Becker, and it's an American maker, what's considered to be the American Stradivarius. He was the best maker we've had in this country. He lived in Chicago, end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century, and made really amazing cellos. And 3 years ago, I was lucky enough to meet this cello and to be able to buy it. So buying it, I mean, now my kids have mortgage on a house, but it's mine, and it was made in 1931.
So my question was, how did you acquire those old cellos? You apply to these
You
foundations?
smile to old ladies.
Tell us about Pablo.
Yeah, so Pablo Casal's cello, of course, Pablo Casals was really the greatest cellist of all time, and his widow is still alive, although he died in 1973. When they got married, he was 84, he was 81, she was 24.
Oh.
Yeah. And she has the cello, and since his death, she gave it to 3 people to use it, usually just for 1 year. And I met her in 2012 and played for her, auditioned for her. And she gave me the cello, and I had it for 6 years, and really played on it all over the world, and recorded a lot on it. It was an amazing journey with it. It's not the easiest instrument to play, so it was not.
Why?
Because, well, the makers of that time, not every Stradivarius is a great instrument. Not every Rolls Royce drives well, but it's a Rolls Royce. Now, Casals loved that cello, but Casals played on gut strings. We don't play on gut strings anymore, most of us. And the sound production in a big hall with that cello was hard to achieve. Where on other instruments like this one, it's much easier. They're in a better condition, they're set up better for big halls. So that cello was like the most beautiful suit that doesn't fit.
I think we heard you in a church, as I recall, and it was a small venue.
Yeah.
And I had no problem.
Yeah, no, I know. In
Wonderful.
church, no problem. Here, no problem. Also, it's very temperamental. So the Casals cello was made in 1733. And like all antiques from that time, it has thousands of cracks that were fixed. But it's fixed with glue. And this glue, if it dries out, it starts rattling and it's buzzing. So if you go to play in Hawaii and it's really wet, the glue melts and it's perfect, but then it's muted. Then you go to Madison in the winter, and it's 10 humidity, 10 degrees. It's so dry, it dries the glue. So it starts buzzing, and it's so temperamental that I just couldn't stand it. And back then, they took a boat. Pablo Casals would take a boat to America, and then his tours used to be 3 months. He would go with a train, and the cello could accommodate to the time, where now we're just flying and jumping between places. So it's a different ball game. So you're all coming tomorrow, yeah? And bring your friends.
Do you have a favorite house that you like to play in? Concert hall or
If I have a favorite place, this is my favorite place.
Okay.
Now, tomorrow it will be downtown. You may be laughing, but I'm serious. People ask me the same question about pieces. Do you have a favorite composer? And it's always the same answer. 5 minutes ago it was Elgar, and 20 minutes ago it was Bloch. Because if not, I would not be fully committed to it. So it has to. This has to be, even if I don't like it. This chair is too low. It's too hot here. The best. This is Carnegie Hall.
When you're in a big hall, do you ever amplify that?
No, I don't amplify the cello because it takes away all the
Exactly.
colors. However, there are some pieces that ask for it. Like there's a piece by Gulda that the cello plays with a big band. It's a concerto for cello and wind ensemble with electric guitar, and it's a really cool piece. But if you don't amplify and you have to fight with trombones and tubas and drum session, it's not possible. So then I do.
The narrative that you described to us going through the different movements, do you do this with every piece you
Absolutely.
Oh,
And
cool.
I said it as a child, it came natural to me, so I would see these images right away when I play the piece. But that's not enough. When you become older, you need to have knowledge in order to ignite your imagination. So the knowledge of the composer, the piece, where it was written, other pieces by the same composer, and so on, is extremely important if we want to make the language clearer. First and foremost for the player, and then it comes out to the audience. Yes?
Have you ever done soundtracks for film or worked in film? You're fantastic.
No, I haven't. I've played in films.
Okay.
I played the Pablo cello, the Casals cello, in a film that was made, it's a beautiful film, documentary about the Jewish ghetto in Venice. It's the oldest one in Europe. It's 400 years old. And we filmed it in the ghetto, but also in an apartment in Venice, where this cello might have been, played, and where next to where Vivaldi lived. And we did a whole week of, they put together 6 artists, a cellist, a comedian, an actor, and we just lived together, and we, all like Big Brother, But it was all script, of course, and we played together, and there was a Hasidic band of Jewish music that would have played in that time in the ghetto. But so I used the cello from that time, and being there, yes, and that was a great experience. But I might play in a movie track, I don't know, depending on, if they pay.